Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 76, Kamala Khan, as selected by our patron, Ruby. Love this pick. Love this character. So thank you very much, Ruby. It's always a good time talking Kamala Khan.
I mean, she definitely is outside the box in terms of what we think of when it comes to comic book heroes. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and something very, very special about this episode, which we'll get into shortly. A couple quick housekeeping items. First off, want to give a shout out to Seth, who is our resident Facebook group meme machine. So thank you, Seth, for posting all sorts of fun stuff over in the Capes on the Couch Facebook group. So if you are on Facebook, please check out our fan group. It is growing. We are small but mighty. And Seth is doing his part to make it very, very entertaining. So lots of good stuff in there. Also want to mention that for the next couple of days, Podchaser, which is an awesome site where you can leave reviews, is doing something really, really special. If you go on podchaser.com and you leave a review for a podcast, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. And if the podcast responds to that review, they will double that. So the other day, I went on and started just dropping reviews like crazy. I was like Oprah. I was like, you get a review, you get a review, you get a review. Everybody gets a review. And of course, everybody who leaves a review for us will naturally get a response to that review so that we can get money out to folks who really need help, especially in time like this. Doc and I are continuing to social distance. He's at his house, I'm at mine. I look forward to the day that we can record again in person, but until we all move past this COVID-19 situation, I think it's best for everybody. I mean, my son just celebrated his 1-year birthday last week, and we had a virtual party for him because his grandparents, his aunts and uncles, nobody can come over and hold him. So that's been a little sad and a little frustrating, but we tried to make the best of it. So we had a lot of fun, video chatting with the family members. But in any case, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. I know a lot of podcasts are talking COVID-19. They're putting out episodes. I know our friends Freudian Sips just did an episode on it. Necessary BS just did one. Whole host of podcasts are talking about this primarily. We are not going to be one of those podcasts. We're just going to mention it in passing and then move on. Because I think if you want to get information on it, you can go to literally anywhere else. But you don't come to Capes on the Couch because you want up-to-date information on real events. You come to Capes on the Couch because you want to learn some stuff, but you want to be entertained.
Darn right. I have to live with holding my N95 mask and guarding it like gold at this point.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So let's move on to Kamala Khan. So she was created by Sana Amanat, Stephen Wacker, Willow Wilson, Adrian Alphona, and Jamie McKelvie. It's quite a cadre of creators in Captain Marvel number 14, August 2013. Now, her first appearance is a one-panel cameo that it's officially her first appearance. But if you really want to get into the point where you know who Kamala Khan is and it actually she's fleshed out as a real person, as a character, that would be Ms. Marvel number 1, February of 2014. So Kamala Khan is the first Muslim superhero to headline a book for Marvel Comics. She is a first-generation Pakistani-American, and she's a teenager, and she kind of chafes against the rules of her parents. They are very strict on her, And so she's not really fond of that. One of the other things that I dig about her as a character is she is a major superhero fangirl. And so she writes a lot of fan fiction about the Avengers, especially Carol Danvers, whom she idolizes. So one night she sneaks out of the house against her parents' wishes, and she goes to this party. And then on her way home, she ends up exposed to the Terrigen Mists, this weird green cloud that comes over Jersey City, which is where she lives. So rock on Jersey. And so the Terrigen Mists unlock her latent Inhuman genes, and it turns out that she has the power to shapeshift. And so her best friend Bruno learns of her abilities after she gets shot, stopping Bruno's brother from robbing the store that Bruno works for. So he becomes her man in the chair, so to speak. He's a technical whiz, and so he's helping her with the costume and providing intel. And so he helps her defeat the inventor, who is her first real nemesis. And the inventor is, I can't believe this is, I don't know who came up with this idea, but God bless him for it. The inventor is a hybrid clone of Thomas Edison and a cockatiel.
I don't know what to add to that. As a matter of fact,
I'm not making that up.
I know. It's just that strange.
It's just like when you're thinking, yeah, exactly. When you're thinking, who do I want this person to fight? How about a half man, half cockatiel with the brain of Thomas Edison and the ethics of Ayn Rand? So that's basically who the inventor is. So a bunch of stuff happens. A lot of Kamala's stories involve her trying to simultaneously balance schoolwork and superherodom because, again, she is a teenager. Very reminiscent, I would say, of early Spider-Man in the whole teen superhero trying to hide their secret identity, get into and out of trouble easily without tipping people off as to their superhero identity.
Right.
So in the Secret Wars arc, she ends up teaming up with her idol, Carol Danvers, and they help protect Jersey City for a spell. Then Kamala gets her family and friends to a safe place where they are waiting for the world to end. And then once the incursions pass and the realities merge, she continues operating as Ms. Marvel. So during a later battle with Warbringer, she's joined by Nova, Spider-Man, several Avengers. And so Iron Man is impressed with her and he offers her a spot on the Avengers. And so she accepts and she's like freaking out because now she's an Avenger, which is like beyond anything that she thought was possible. So one of the storylines is she's dealing with Hydra, who is using the Ms. Marvel likeness to co-opt their redevelopment scheme, which involves brainwashing residents, including Bruno and some store owners. And it's about gentrification of the neighborhood, which, Doc, you and I live in New Jersey. You and I are aware of a lot of the changes that have been made to Jersey City over the years. You take out the Hydra stuff, but a lot of this is really hitting home. I mean, we're seeing it in Hoboken. We're seeing it in Jersey City. A lot of that area that's adjacent to Manhattan is really being taken over by a lot of up and coming yuppies, so to speak, and young professionals and things of that nature. So again, Hydra and the brainwashing thing is comic books, but the changing face of Jersey City, that is legit. So she does manage to defeat Hydra, but it takes a hit to her reputation because the residents of Jersey City who see Kamala as really, or see Ms. Marvel, I should say, as someone who really defends the neighborhood, they saw her face being used for this redevelopment and this gentrification. And they were saying, oh, she's a sellout and this and that. So it really messed with her, which of course was Hydra's goal. So
and that's when she decides that she sings Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. That's Carmen Miranda. I'm sorry. But a very similar story. Anyway.
I was going to say that's Madonna, but I won't get into that.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So during the Civil War II storyline, she initially sides with Carol Danvers because Carol uses the fact that Kamala is infatuated with Carol to bring her onto her side of utilizing the Inhuman Ulysses and the precognitive abilities that they have to stop crime before it happens. And so she's convinced, well, if Carol's behind this must be the right side. But she comes to realize that Carol's sort of manipulating her and she stands up to her idol, especially after Carol's precog arrests a friend of hers named Josh, who was supposedly going to blow up the school. And in the ensuing attempt to rescue Josh, Bruno is seriously injured and he blames Kamala. So she's like, you know what? I have to do what's right, even if that means standing up to you. And so they have a falling out, so to speak. And so she ends up quitting the Avengers because they're too focused on the planet and not enough on the little guys. And so she joins the Champions, and this is a team of other young heroes. And so they recruit other heroes. They recruit the Wasp, Robbie Reyes, Amadeus Cho. There's a whole host of other teen heroes, Miles Morales. And so they sort of operate. And she ends up reconciling with Carol as well as Bruno. And in the newest, the current ongoing series, The Magnificent Ms. Marvel, not to be confused with The Marvelous Miss Maisel, it is revealed that all of her friends and her parents know of her dual identity. So I sort of gloss over a lot of stuff. But again, Kamala is a fairly young she's a young character, and she's also a new character. She's only been around 6 years. So there's not a litany of stories to tell about her. But again, as I said earlier, I like the way that she's written. She's young, and so she's got that spunk and that young vitality to her. And the fact that she is as infatuated with superheroes as she is, I think makes for a very compelling and interesting story. So let's talk about her issues. So before we'll get into the fangirling aspect in a moment, but the first thing that I wanted to touch on is she's dealing with very strict parents. And this comes not only from a situation where she is a teenage girl. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners who were all teenagers at one point, you all remember chafing against your parents. They had their rules. They said, you can do this, you can't do that, you can't stay out past this time, I want you home by then, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, she's got the immigrant issue, she has the religious issue. These are all, in her mind, ways for her parents conspiring against her, forbidding her from having fun, forbidding her from having a life. And so there's this struggle that she deals with. Again, the wanting to love and respect her parents, but also wanting to forge her own identity. She's trying not to be entirely disrespectful of her heritage, but still trying to Americanize herself to some extent. And so there's a lot going on here. And that's, I would say it's a very common issue. And kudos to G. Willow Wilson for writing it as well and as compelling as she did. So I'll stop talking and I'll let Doc take over.
Okay, no problem. Just a little background with G. Willow Wilson. She converted to Islam in her life and therefore has a very unique take that you can see through Kamala. But she made it very clear in previous interviews that she did not want the religion itself to be the overarching identity for her. And as Anthony already pointed out, the number one thing is this could just as easily be an Irish Catholic family in America. This could just as easily be an Indian, European, British family that has to make some adjustments. This is something that all sorts of generations and cultures have to do in multiple times in history. I mean, that's just the way it is. America, of course, is known as this stew or melting pot, so it adds its own flair to it. But the point with Kamala is she's also at a time where her age and her hormonal development clearly is going to influence her take on the world. And you add in superpowers, of course, that's going to be something added to it. But you don't need superpowers to understand that you are getting more thrown on you in life than you ever have before. Academically, that's something that teenagers deal with, not just because you are learning things that you haven't learned before, but now, I think we've mentioned this in previous episodes, the idea, especially in her family, of doing everything perfectly, getting into college, making sure that you have the right focus in life. Those are the things that are being thrust upon her day after day. Meanwhile, she still is a child, and therefore she still wants to have fun. She still wants to have friends. She wants to be able to have that level of freedom and do what she wants. So you have things that often are in direct conflict. So humans in general, we don't want to be in conflict. We want things to work out for us. And the teenage brain is usually wired to say that if something is not for us, then it is against us. And if something is against us, then it has to be, well, I'll use the gentle term, it has to be overthrown. Because no lie, there are some families where it does get into physical fights. Thankfully, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it can be a matter of just simply doing minor rebellious things, something as simple as staying up past your bedtime, which is fairly innocuous. But it can take other forms. It could take experimenting with substances. It can take trying to develop relationships, even when your family, for many reasons, may either frown on it or outright forbid it. And we'll get into that a little bit later. It can be just simply doing the exact opposite of what people are telling you because you don't see any other way out. And I don't even mean that to sound as dramatic as I said it. It's more along the lines that you're just trying to see if your way of thinking will actually work in the world. It's experimentation. That's something that, in theory, you can have a balance for. But then again, I'm also going to take a side that, especially now that I'm a parent, maybe I didn't understand in previous years. There's a protective factor in why parents act the way they do. They've had their own experiences, been there, done that, and therefore either they found that their way worked, or maybe they found that they're doing something similar to what the teenager did and it didn't work, and they just want to protect them. But either way, it's the type of dynamic where it's not meant to be equal. And the best way I could say it is and maybe I'll get some flack for saying this, but your parent is not your friend. And so from that standpoint, some children wish their parents were their friends, and sometimes parents wish that they were their children's friends. And when there's a disconnect as to what level they're on, then that just makes it 10 times worse. So you end up in this spiral pattern of trying to get along more while trying to step on eggshells or trying to avoid stepping on eggshells and not making things worse. But also sometimes looking in and saying, okay, this isn't working, we have to step in, while other times you're saying, okay, this is a time where maybe we need to pull back. So everyone is struggling with this all simultaneously. And no one else, no matter how much we try, no one else can really automatically say, nope, this is the right way. If someone could do that, I'm pretty sure they would have already solved all the problems in the world and we'd be in a utopia, but we're not. So Kamala, unfortunately, ends up in a situation where she is able to do more than most teenagers, and therefore she's actually able to take control of a lot of things in their lives that she otherwise wouldn't be able to. And actually, that's not that far off from some of the things that are happening right now, because I can tell you anecdotally, there are some situations where teenagers are the ones with the jobs right now. They're the ones that have the license and are driving for Uber or Lyft or doing deliveries, while their parents, who have sometimes more upscale jobs, if they can't work from home, are being furloughed. So those types of dynamics are not just in comic books. They really do happen. And when it does happen, there can be some resentment that starts to build up, because now parents that were really trying to make sure that their kids are on the right path, that's great. But now they're basically saying, okay, well, you're going to take care of everything, right? Because that's your job now. And the kid is probably like, this was supposed to be like my fun money. Now I have to, help the family. What on earth? And I think that's directly related to someone like Kamala with her powers. So life can imitate art in ways that we don't even expect in these circumstances. I don't envy anyone that is going through something like that. To be blunt, I don't envy anybody that went through teenage years with that type of huge split in terms of the dynamic. But the thing I will say in general, from what I've seen, is that it tends to come from a place of love. And as long as everybody remembers that, there will be ways to work it out. I'll leave it at that.
Excellent point. And I am reminded of something that Sheikh Abdullah said in one of the series. I forget which one, because there have been a couple, where he basically says that, to your point, that each generation thinks that it invented love and that it is the first to go through all of these situations that it is dealing with, and that they are not really interested in listening to the experience of their elders. and that if they would just do so, that things would be better. And the other point that he made is also that parents forget that they also went through a lot of these same situations. And so they need to be a little more understanding of their children when they are going through it. It's like, now that the parents are older, you forgot you used to do stupid stuff back when you were younger. So maybe back off your kids a little bit and cut them a little bit of slack. So I think that parents and children, both on both sides of the spectrum, can certainly learn from each other and be a little perhaps more understanding, moving forward in the future. So the next issue that I want to talk about, as we discussed it very heavily, and a major component of Kamala's character and her characterization, is the fact that she is a superhero fangirl. She is very much infatuated with the Avengers, superheroes in general, and especially Carol Danvers, and which is all well and good. It very much leads to a broken pedestal situation, particularly during Civil War II, where she is convinced that Carol is doing the right thing. And because she's Carol, she must be doing the right thing. And it turns out that Carol is sort of in the wrong in this situation. And Kamala struggles coping with that. And this ends up leading to problems. They do eventually reconcile, but hero worship for anyone can be a major issue, even superheroes. So, Doc, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting because, in a way, I think I've experienced this on both sides. I had someone, I'm not going to give too much detail, but basically a known public figure, a physician, and some of the things that they did that I found out later on, I didn't agree with. It's as simple as that. That doesn't mean that I throw away everything that I knew about them or why I looked up to them in the first place. And then, someone that I know has made it clear that they looked up to me and I didn't live up to my end of the bargain. I'm not saying anything negative about that person at all. It's just the way it is. So from that standpoint, just, not just from personal experience, but knowing that in any relationship, in any situation where one person is trying to make a connection with someone else and they actually get the opportunity to make it personal. In other words, we're not talking about just fangirling. We're talking about the fact that she got to know Carol. She actually got to interact with Carol. They did positive things together. So that goes from just being a part of being a fan, which is short for fanatic. Sometimes we forget that. It becomes a true dynamic that is going to evolve over time. But unfortunately, sometimes we as humans like to simply focus on what we consider to be the positives and don't look at, I'm not even going to say negatives, we're going to look at the quirks and just throw them away as if they don't exist. So from that standpoint, you're setting up a straw man. You're setting up the idea that this is the thing I have to live up to and I have to continue to focus on. And then if any one part, regardless of if it's directly related to what I consider to be positive, goes wrong, then that means all of it is wrong. It's the type of catastrophizing that can lead to a very negative social outlook. So in this case, I will say Carol did have a direct role where when I read it, it did sound like she basically was manipulative. And that is always going to be true with someone that feels like they have a position of power. If that's the case, then no, I'm not going to say that Kamala intentionally did anything wrong, but the emotional burden then that creates for her is really painful. On the other hand, if it's a matter of a disagreement, or I'll make it sound ridiculous because that's kind of the point here. If the person that is put on this pedestal is doing something totally unrelated and just doesn't, it just doesn't seem germane to what that person's goal is. So let's say this could take a couple of forms. If we're talking really in the negative, we're talking about a cult leader that basically tells their followers, well, you can leave at any time, but they have so much power that the person that's in the cult basically says, like, yeah, I could leave at any time, but if I do, everything is going to fall apart. That actually is based in reality, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't take the chance and at least get outside help so that they can live a better life. If we're talking about someone, though, that simply had their own ideas, and the best example I can give to do another pop culture reference with The Incredibles, Syndrome. I mean, he loved Mr. Incredible and wanted to do all this stuff as a kid, but Mr. Incredible obviously wanted to make sure, like, kid, you're going to get yourself killed. And it leads to the entire first movie. So that's a situation where, in theory, that child did nothing that he saw wrong, and Mr. Incredible clearly did nothing wrong, but because of that emotional weight that the child put on their own fandom, it created such a negative view that they devoted their entire life to destroying the construct that nobody else really had a problem with up until that point. So I'm using both sides to show how far the extremes can be. With Kamala, thankfully, she's able to show a level of maturity even at her age that clearly things don't have to be that way forever. Things may be the way they are now. That doesn't mean that's the way they stay. So even if a pedestal is broken like that, that doesn't mean it can't be mended. But then again, maybe you just don't need the pedestal at all. So I always appreciate these types of stories because they touch on the type of dynamic that you have so many times in life, whether one side is aware of it or not. If you are a person that has ever had someone like you, or say that they knew that they liked you from the moment they met you, or things like that, if you're not aware of it, and at this point, I'm giving myself just as much of this pep talk as anybody else. If you're not aware of it, then you can actually do damage and not even know it. And that can really, really haunt you. If it's something, though, that you're aware of and you continue to foster a positive mindset and a positive view for people, then hopefully it'll lead to more good than harm. So I'll kind of leave it at that, because someone like Kamala clearly is going to continue to have that. I think, going back to the original point, because there's so much of a cultural component to it. Even if it's not meant to be at the forefront, it is there. And there are real life examples of Kamala being used as a character to demonstrate that in our society. So it would be foolish to say that, well, the Carol thing, that was a one-time thing and that's that. Like, well, maybe with Carol itself, but not with Kamala.
Interesting. And I do like your point that instead of trying to repair the pedestal, maybe you should just get rid of the pedestal to begin with. I think that's it's a very powerful point, and it's not something I had really considered beforehand, because I guess I was looking at it from the point of view that, you know, this is her hero and her idol. Because I do think it's important that you have people to look up to. And I know you're not necessarily discounting the idea of having a mentor, having someone to look up to, but if it comes to the point of almost fetishization of that person, that's where it could potentially become a problem. And I think maybe for Kamala, it sort of crossed that barrier just a titch, and it took something like the Civil War situation to get her to back off and see things a little differently. So excellent points, Doc, as always. So the last thing that I want to touch upon is something that's more related to Kamala being both a teenager and, dare I say, to some extent, a young woman. But it's this notion of the whole crush that she has on Bruno and the unrequited feelings that she has, and this sort of will they, won't they type scenario where she's struggling with how she feels. And then we didn't really get into this too much in the background, but Bruno does end up getting a girlfriend because they push each other away for a spell because they realize that it's not going to work with Kamala's double life. And that so she basically tells Bruno, you know, you have to move on from me. And he does very reluctantly. And he ends up dating this girl named Michaela, for a while. And that really hurts Kamala's feelings, because she was like, I thought you were like, my person. And now to come to find out that, you have somebody else, that really messes with her for a while. It does, like I said, end up getting resolved in the current run. But just from a teenage perspective, the whole notion of unrequited love and teenage crushes could be very powerful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I'm going to use this as a reminder to adults, if you're listening and you have teenage children. If you don't remember what it was like for yourself, or you didn't even have that experience, so be it. But the first thing I will say is that it's real. In other words, I think it's become the status quo to say that when a teenager is in love or is experiencing that for the first time, or any time when they're still in that adolescent phase, that doesn't make the emotion any less legitimate. And if we don't keep an eye on that point, then it becomes a situation where everyone is just talking past one another. We can't just flippantly say, "Oh, well, it's a thing. It's for now, but don't worry, you'll find someone, or there's other people." And all. When you start saying that too often, it starts to illegitimize the idea that a person at any age can't have the most intense feelings for their particular time period. That's not fair. So now that I've got that out of the way, this is a situation where Kamala really has an ideal, and similar to the pedestal thing, but not in terms of wanting to look up to someone. It's just simply finding that true connection that you think is going to last the rest of your life. That's the part that becomes so alluring at such a young age, because the types of love and affection that we experience up until that point for most people is very different. Let's phrase this a different way and make it sound almost bizarre. Someone that you have no connection to, a complete stranger that you will only you will only spend a fraction of your time with, or maybe up to a school day, depending on how your schedules are. You are now so connected with that you are willing to say that they are the most important person in your life, and you will spend the rest of your life with them. Sounds insane, and yet that's pretty much what most of us do. We make decisions at some point that someone that otherwise, if it weren't for the fact that we just simply say, "I want you to do this," will end up with a connection with someone else that otherwise would not automatically have that connection with you. That's true of friendship as well. But you're saying this is the one. I'm not going to get into polygamy or anything. So how do we get past that huge emotional and mental hurdle to say that, yes, I am going to completely trust this stranger? You have to have an emotional connection in theory. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, even if it's backwards. In other words, let's go ahead and go with this, because I'll bring in the cultural point to it. Let's say that you're talking about arrangements. Even in that case, just about every culture that does that points out, well, the whole point is you get so familiar with the person that you do start to develop that type of connection and recognize it as a positive, because otherwise it's just really creepy. So she's young enough where she's allowing herself to have that experience, and provided that there is that physical connection, and with teenagers, that is a humongous thing, then everything else actually sounds really simple. Like, why wouldn't I go ahead and spend my time with the person that is producing this feeling for me? So then the next hurdle, and we've discussed this in previous episodes, is what happens after that initial endorphin rush fades? Or what if only one person got that endorphin rush? The other person wanted the endorphin rush, but it never happened. Now we have the awkward conversation. Wow, I don't know if I want to continue trying with this, but I don't know anything else, so I don't know if I want to do this again. So now our brain tricks us. It tricks us into saying, because I had this positive experience with this one person in terms of the emotion involved, either that's going to be the only one I ever have, in which case I have to stick with that person, or the pain when it goes away is so bad that there's nothing worth it. I apologize. I said that so clumsily. It's not worth it to go through all of that again. All of this points to what some people have referred to as the greatest love story of all time. We were talking about this just before recording about Romeo and Juliet. And Anthony, believe me, you could say it. I'll say it too. That's just total bunk. The idea that is the world's greatest love story, I think it actually is the perfect example of how teenage love is. It can be absolutely wrong. But like I said, not to lose sight of that very first point, the emotion is real, but the consequences don't have to be terminal. And so teenagers may or may not know the difference. And that's where they may need, or not may, they definitely need other older and, I'll dare say it, wiser people to remind them of that. But I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to acknowledge, how many teenagers do we know that stuck together for years and years and end up getting married and end up having children and end up living the rest of their lives together? I see it plenty of times. I hope I'm experiencing it, to be blunt. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to knock teenage love. I'm not going to knock the crushes, but I am going to acknowledge they may be temporary. And if they're temporary, don't let them be the end.
Well said. I'm not going to comment more about that because I know that we are trying not to divulge too much of our personal lives in here, but I know at the very least, you and I know of at least one couple that we went to high school with that's still married and still together, possibly more. But at least one of them comes off the top of my head. So in any case, all good stuff. So we're going to take a quick break, plug a couple of shows, and then we come back. We're going to get into treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jimmy from the podcast Talk Me Into, the show where my co-hosts Dan, Jeff, and I talk each other, and maybe even you, into liking what we like. Here's a little taste of our show.
I need another episode.
Whoa, my God. I was not expecting this.
It claps too.
It does. It do clap. It's a proper bop.
Jeff and Jimmy, did I talk you into liking spoilers?
No.
If you feel so inclined, you can listen to our show every Tuesday. Find us in every podcasting app and follow us on Twitter at TalkMeInto.
Hey podcast fans, I'm Rachel, host of We're All Mad Here, a new podcast about the history of mental health. Do you love history? Do you love creepy stories of abandoned hospitals? How about questionable medical procedures? We're covering it all. Not only will we sneak around in old asylums, we'll talk about the patients that stayed there and what their lives were like. We're covering disorders, cures, and living life with mental illness. So come join us on We're All Mad Here at allmadpod.com, because the history of mental illness is insane.
Hi, I'm Saladin Ahmed, and this is Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So treatment in universe. Now, this is one of those situations where, and I know we're going to touch on some of this stuff a little bit in the skit, but Kamala, for all of her issues and for all of her teenage vitality and inexperience, and dare I say, to some extent, immaturity, she is incredibly well-rounded and very grounded and a very rational individual. So I'd be very curious to see what treatment options you would offer for Kamala Khan.
Yeah, I gave this a little bit of thought. I'm not sure it will be much different than Out of Universe, but I think there has to be some focus in terms of knowing her boundaries, even with her powers. There's this idea that don't want to crush her hopes. She at times feels like she can do anything, and that's a wonderful feeling. But I think she ends up putting on these rose-colored glasses that say, well, if I can defeat this person, if I can, hang out with these heroes and all this, I can do anything. And then the second that something goes wrong, I'm not saying she doesn't fall apart, clearly not, but you could tell that it does emotionally take a toll on her a little more than would be expected from someone with more experience in those patterns. So I think the main focus, may even be getting the type of interactions, like it would be interpersonal therapy. In other words, tell me about how you're interacting with Bruno. Tell me about how you're interacting with Carol. How, and almost going back and forth, line by line. Almost as if it's a skit itself. Mainly because when someone is so wrapped up in the emotion of serious events, they may not recognize each individual step they're taking and the influence it's having. In other words, I think she's actually pretty good at the whole. I think she's good at getting the main focus of major goals in life, but this is one of those few times that I think it's better to get focused on the details, because doing that will allow for her to have a better emotional process. Because what's happening is things are building up. And at the end, it's like, oh my God, what happened? And how she feels, while she might be able to process it a little bit at a time in the moment, so that it doesn't end up in this big, these big events that she has to make these drastic changes. So it sounds more dramatic than it needs to be, and I would like to limit that somewhat. And I think the types of characters that she's dealing with would support that. So I don't think there would be that much conflict per se. If anything, I would say the biggest conflict would be with her parents. But even that, especially now with the most recent issues, I mean, it sounds like these are things that can be worked out. Kamala comes across as what I like to refer to as the worried well. And I don't mean that as an insult. What I mean is, it's the type of thing where a person is clearly, if no one intervened, like if a mental health professional didn't intervene, would Kamala's life be okay? And there's a very good chance I would say yes. But that doesn't mean it can't be better. And that doesn't mean that we can't help. So if she seeks out the help, that's fine. She's not in a situation where I would think to myself, oh, she needs to be in a hospital, she needs to do this or that. So I wouldn't focus on that. It would be, as I've said so many times, what can we do to make you an even greater hero than what you are? And I don't have any major gimmicks with it. I don't have any super strange techniques for in-universe. So, maybe it's just a little bland for that sake. Maybe I'm more of the break in between the action, but that's okay. Sometimes that's really what a person needs.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, I was very curious how you were going to address all of the issues, and speaking on everything that's been going on with her parents, it is better in the newer stuff, but it is still certainly not, I would say, completely resolved. They are still very much worried about her and obviously concerned for their daughter, who is going out and risking her life on a almost nightly basis. And I mean, that's just a parental thing that, certainly you and I as parents can certainly appreciate, even if our kids don't have superpowers, that you don't want them going out and risking their lives on a regular basis, because there does exist a legitimate possibility that they won't come home. And as a parent, that is a terrifying thought. So out of universe, then, what would the equivalent be? I suppose you've got child of immigrants, a young teenage girl dealing with the strictures of religion and parenting and boy troubles, not to be sexist or pedantic about it, but that's essentially what she's dealing with, is boy troubles, trying to fit in, all of the teenage stuff. And so I know you alluded to it earlier. You don't want to say to them, well, that's okay, you're going to get over it, because that's being incredibly dismissive. But how do you give them the benefit of the experience that they don't have and won't be able to gain for many, many years without forcing it on them?
Yeah, the biggest thing here for teenagers is figuring out what their language is. And no, I'm not referring to like immigrants and different languages. What I'm referring to is what exactly is it that the person uses either as a coping or defense mechanism, and really tapping into that. So teenage years have the capacity of being some of the most creative times in a person's life. So it's often where people are still trying to find what it is that's going to work for them, even as an adult. It can be a matter of music, it can be other art, it can be writing, it can be athletics, whatever it is, you have to tap into that language. So for someone like Kamala, let's kind of translate it where, she's kind of a school, she's basically I like to call them the hybrid. In other words, it's clear that she's smart enough to hang with the nerds, but athletic enough that she can relate to the jocks. So on one hand, in this case, someone like Bruno, I'm really stretching it, I know, but I want to make sure that it's relevant to real life. So someone like Bruno clearly is not a superhero. So he's more on, much more in the regular kid, possible nerd category. But meanwhile, the people that Kamala looks up to outside of this are all athletes and stuff. But she has such a strict religious family, and as a female in in a Islamic household, depending on what sport she's doing, it could be highly frowned upon, to the point of saying, short of forbidding, because they still let her do it because she's young enough and they think it's just a phase. So that's all incredibly realistic. To be blunt, that's pretty much realistic in exactly where we live. So from that standpoint, all of those things, it's a matter of, as I already said, okay, well, what is it that you do? What I need to know is, what do you do when you're alone? Because I know what you do with your family, because you feel like you have to kind of rebel. So you play up all of the sports and stuff. And I know you want to make sure that you have this relationship with this guy that you really have this crush on. So you talk about what books you like and how smart you are. But what do you do when no one's watching? That's the important stuff. Not that the other things aren't important. It's just that that's the therapy part. That's the part that's going to unlock how your emotions process dealing with these things all at once. So if I find out that she really enjoys a certain type of music, okay, let's tap into that. What are your favorite songs? Why do you always listen to those ones that are about heartache? That's fascinating, because I thought you had a good relationship with this person. Oh, you really enjoy writing. And we know that she does her fan fiction. Oh, okay. What happens to the characters? It's amazing. It seems like you always end with one female getting beat up by another more dominant female over someone that you say that you sounds a lot like your former potential boyfriend. Keying in on things like that can be really powerful, and the person may not have ever recognized that that's what they were doing. Although someone like Kamala honestly may be fully aware that that's what they're doing, but they just don't want to talk about it. And that's their one way to do it. So we may be like their living, breathing diary at that point, which is something that you have to take incredibly seriously. So when it comes to these things, you do your best not to press the person about them, because the second you do that with any teenager, that's when they'll clam up. But also, I've seen it the other way. I've definitely seen teenagers that this is their one opportunity to talk, and so they just want to get everything out all at once, and you have to slow them down. Either way, you meet them where they are, you find their language, and you do your best, because no one's perfect at it, but you learn how to speak it and translate it so that they're going to have a more smooth, positive, emotional experience during turmoil.
So let's talk about why you have Lizzo on repeat. I saw your Spotify playlist. It's nothing but Lizzo. Let's talk about that. Interesting. I do think it is obviously important to discuss, to talk with kids about meeting them where they are. And I think that's to some extent what it is that you're getting at with the out of universe treatment is meeting them where they are and saying, okay, what's going on right now? And then how much of this are you willing to divulge to me versus trying to, I don't want to say pry it out, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So interesting. Well, we're on the skit now, and we have an interesting situation. This is our first ever open casting call for the voice of a character. I posted on Twitter and on social media requesting young female Muslim podcasters or young female Muslim fans of the show to reach out to voice Kamala Khan. And so we got a couple of entries, and Nur Chodry, who is a fan of the show, won the prize, so to speak. And so she is going to be the voice of Kamala Khan. So you will be hearing her momentarily when we get Kamala Khan on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Kamala. I'm Dr. Issues.
Be cool.
Sorry?
You're the Dr. Issues.
What?
I've read so much about you. You're super famous, and you're talking to me?
Not famous at all.
I mean, sure you are. You're the preeminent superhero psychiatrist. You've helped so many heroes. Iron Man, Wolverine, Captain America, and let's not forget Carol. You're a real asset to the Avengers, you know?
Thanks.
No problem. I'm an Avenger too, you know. I was.
I see. You seem sad about that.
I mean, growing up, the Avengers were everything to me. They were so cool, and I wanted to be one. And then I got these powers, and then I became Miss Marvel, and then I became an Avenger, and then...
Then you realized it wasn't all what you thought it was.
Ooh, you're good.
I am the preeminent superhero psychiatrist, after all. So let me ask you, what's your primary reason for being here?
I guess it's just a lot to handle. Superheroing and boys and my parents, and I mean, if they even knew I was in here alone with you, they'd totally freak out, and Abu would ground me for like an eternity in a day.
Parents don't know what you do?
Well, my mom does, and she's cool about it sometimes, but my dad, he would never understand. He's all, focus on studies, beta. Only studies, beta. Make sure you're home on time, beta. Don't think about boys at all, beta. Or else I swear, he doesn't know what it's like to have something that makes you super happy. He really doesn't.
You sure about that? Sounds to me like he wants to keep you safe. Speaking as a parent, that's our number one job. I mean, you make him happy in his own way, and he's trying to protect you even without the superhero stuff. And besides, this is Jersey. Crazy stuff happens all the time. It's totally reasonable for him to worry about you. If something happened to you, he'd never live with himself.
I know. It's just becoming Miss Marvel was the best thing that's ever happened to me. Even with all the nonsense around me, these powers, they help me protect my friends and my family and my city, and I'm doing the right thing, so why does it feel so bad sometimes?
I've told other clients.
Like who?
I'm not allowed to tell you.
No. It's cool. I was an Avenger. Did I mention I was an Avenger? I mentioned that, right? Was it another Avenger? Was it Carol? Ooh, what did you guys talk? Did you talk about me? Did she mention me?
Oh, I can't violate patient-client confidentiality.
Oh, come on.
I can tell you what I told them, but I can't divulge anything else.
Fine.
My goal is to make you the best version of yourself that you can be. Sometimes that involves some hard choices. Sometimes that involves asking yourself difficult questions. What do you want with these powers? What do you want to do with them?
Help people.
That's a simple answer.
I mean, is there more than that? I don't know. The Quran says, help one another in acts of piety and righteousness, and do not assist each other in acts of sinfulness and transgression. And that's one lesson Sheikh Abdullah said that really stuck with me.
But I ask you, seriously, at what cost? What does the Quran say about helping other people at the cost of your own life?
I guess you're right. Maybe I should have paid more attention to Sheikh Abdullah.
I'm not asking you to quote chapter and verse. My point is that no matter what your belief system is, and no matter how good of a hero you are or you want to be, you have to be sure to take care of yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
I mean, I'm not empty, though. I feel like I'm overflowing. I always have so much energy, and I have a lot to say, and you're the one who can help listen to all of it, and you can fix it.
Whoa, this is a team activity here. We fix it. Let me ask... Oh, you could get that.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna get that. It's my father.
Okay, no problem.
Big problem? He doesn't know that I'm here.
Well, you're gonna have to talk to him at some point.
Oh, can you take it then?
No, he's your father.
Oh, okay, fine. Feed me lines. Tell him in the hospital or something.
Hey, Kamala. Okay, just let it ring for now. We can work this out. And now this is probably where it gets awkward.
No, wait, I'll call you back. I'm sorry.
That doesn't sound like it went well.
Well, there was no yelling. That's actually a good one.
So what did he say?
I'm not really sure I can tell you without making this a 3-hour session. He wants to protect me. He wants to know everything is perfect, but I'm not perfect. And I can't say anything besides that. Anything besides yes is a failure. And now I want to protect him, but he doesn't know it, not in the way that he should.
It's a hypothesis. What if you told him all of that the way that you just told me?
What? No. No way. No, you're just gonna sit there.
I tend to do that when I'm waiting for someone to accept the truth.
You know, you can really be annoying sometimes.
That's the spirit. That's what other people tell me when they really start to hit on pain points. Look, it gets better, I promise.
Okay, that's not as reassuring as you think, but I mean, whatever. What's good enough for the Avengers is good enough for me.
I like to call it the messy middle. It's where you find a balance between the uncomfortable topics in your life and the positive feelings that happen on the other side.
Does that mean I get to roleplay and beat up somebody?
Based on previous sessions, no.
You're no fun. Whatever. So can I include you in my next fanfic?
Sure, as long as I don't die.
Okay, consider it done. As a matter of fact, I'll send you an advance copy before I post it to freakingcool.com.
Thanks, just what I always wanted.
Then everyone will know how good you are, and you'll get more clients.
Oh, goody.
Well, I think that went well. Sorry, it didn't end quite the way she wanted it, but at least your office is safe.
Yeah, and I just get more publicity, which is exactly what
I know. That's all you ever wanted. That's why you're in this.
Yeah.
For the fame and fortune, right?
Yep. Good old anonymous doc issues. Yeah, that's really what I wanted.
So that's going to just about wrap it up for this episode. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, we've got Secret Identities, Shredder from Ninja Turtles, and Dick Grayson. We are holding off on the Natasha Romanoff episode because, as Marvel announced the other day, that they are postponing the release of the Black Widow movie to November on account of the coronavirus situation. We see no need to rush putting up the Natasha episode. So we will tie that one in with the movie come November when it is timely. So, which is fine. It, just like I said, it gives us an opportunity to shuffle things around a little bit, but we're all sort of making do as best we can. As we mentioned at the top of the show, if you go to podchaser.com and you leave a review for our show or any podcast, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. And if the podcast responds to your review, they will double that to 50 cents. So I already know that we've gotten 1 or 2 reviews in the last couple of days. And I went on a review spree myself, leaving reviews for many of our friends' shows, and several of them have already responded. So if you have a Podchaser account, please go to podchaser.com and check out not only our show, but a lot of our friends' show. I know we're on a couple of podcast lists. It's basically, they're trying to be like the IMDb of podcasts, and I think they're doing a great service for the podcasting community. So podchaser.com is where you want to be, and obviously the money goes to a very good cause. Our Patreon review of the Lock and Key trade paperback is now up. If you are a patron at the $3 and up level, you will have access to that trade paperback review. Last month, we did the Joker Endgame, and we released that one publicly as a little teaser. And now moving forward, all of our reviews will be for patrons only. Our lucky patrons who will not be paying for the month of April because we are waiving all of the fees. And that was inspired by our friends over at the Perfect Package podcast show. So Chad and Dave, thank you so much for inspiring that move. And I know that Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, has been so inspired by our move. So I want to make sure we give full credit to Chad and Dave. They were the ones who started this off, at least as far as I'm aware. I don't know if they got that idea from anybody else, but kudos on them. I know that we will be making, or at least I will be making an appearance on the show at some point in the not too distant future. Doc, you and I are also, as of the time that this episode is out, we will have just recorded a guest spot on the Guardians MH podcast, our fellow mental health Avengers. So that's awesome to know, and looking forward to, as of recording this episode, we haven't done it yet, but looking forward to talking Mega Man will be the character that we're talking about. So I'm going to go, as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go play some Legacy Collection to refresh my brain on the Blue Bomber.
Yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah.
So that's going to about do it for the show. As always, you can find us on all of social medias at Capes on the Couch. We are basically everywhere on all of the podcatching platforms. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like, rate, and review, like Podchaser or Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, please do so. And if you send us a screen cap of that rating and email it to us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com along with your physical address, we will send you a sticker. And I reached out to our TeePublic store asking about wholesale of stickers. I'm not really sure if they got the email. I don't know what's going on with their manufacturing on account of the coronavirus. I do know, however, that we are very close. Doc and I are finalizing the design for our next shirt, our next logo. So it is real. It is a thing. And we will be finalizing those details very, very shortly. So stay tuned. And as soon as that goes live on our TeePublic store, we will let you know. So Doc, anything you want to add before we head out?
No, just it's a beautiful thing when teenagers really learn how to navigate life without absolutely destroying everything in their path. And that is not as sarcastic as it sounds.
Excellent point. So thank you so much for Doc Issues. I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.